Hi, this is Mary O'Brien, the State Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator, and today I'm going to be going over FDM 223 bicycle facilities and how the chapter has changed from 2019 to 2020. So in the bulletin, it states that this chapter has been substantially reworked and reorganized, and because there are so many changes, I wanted to give a quick little overview as to the reason why there have been so many changes. So first of all, there was a new document that came out in February 2019 from FHWA called the Bikeway Selection Guide. And this has some pretty different guidance in it from what we have received in the past. And it's this document that has informed a lot of our changes to this chapter. Also, the AASHTO Bike Guide is anticipated to be released in the early part of 2020. And we reached out to the folks that are working on that update and asked them for any insights they could share with us so that we could make sure our FDM is going to be current when it gets released. And they said that it's going to closely reflect what's in the Bikeway Selection Guide. So we looked very closely at what's in here and how we could incorporate it into our chapter. One of the big changes of our chapter is we have a new design user, and that's an idea of our facilities being for all ages and all abilities. This particular example, this isn't something we put together, it came from somewhere else, but they talk about a 12-year-old. We don't specify any specific age, but we just have this concept of our users of our facilities could be a child, they could be a senior citizen. We are a state that a lot of retirees come to. It could be a tourist who's never been to our area before. Everything is brand new to them, and they're not commuting to work. It's not a regular route that they go all the time, but they're in a different mindset. They're here to have fun. In the past, the thought has somewhat been, it seems, at least with the sorts of facilities that were designed, that the design user was more an athletic 30-year-old, somebody in really great shape who has a driver's license, understands the rules of the road. They're maybe commuting to work. They know the area, things like that. And now we're having a completely different mindset of who's using our facilities, and we're designing accordingly. So what does this mean? All this new information, how is that being reflected in our facilities? Here's a big change. In some cases, you may use a shared use path instead of a bike lane. In the past, that was not the case, but that's what we're moving towards, more separated facilities. And along those lines, we're having more guidance on separated bike lanes. These separated facilities really require a lot more, and for all ages and all abilities, we really need to be thinking about all of our conflict points and how we can thoughtfully manage all of that. And more time and more coordination will help us be successful in high quality separated facilities. And a good way to set ourselves up for success for that is to have a district bicycle facility plan. So for the first time, we're making reference to that. In the past, when we were doing bicycle lanes with these other types of design users in mind, it was easier to get things done in a shorter period of time. But now we're thinking that more time might be necessary. All right, so that's the overview of some of the reasons why we're moving in this direction. And next, I'm going to walk us through the chapter step by step. So right off the bat, in the general section, we have this language about a bicycle facility plan. Starts off, bicycle safety can be enhanced through the following measures. And then there's a number of different bullets there, and we've added a new one, number 4. Developing and maintaining a district bicycle facility plan to assign proposed bicycle facility types through a consistent and efficient process and ensure the following. Integration of FDOT bicycle facilities with local and regional bicycle transportation systems, and the direct use of more complex facility types in a cost-effective and efficient manner. Next, we removed the blue boxes throughout this chapter. In the other webinars that I've done, I have said with each section when a blue box has been removed, but here, just across the board, those have been removed. There's a change in the bicycle facilities section. We removed the wide curb lanes from the list of bicycle facilities. That kind of goes back to this idea of our design users are not that we're thinking of will be less confident or comfortable mixing with motorized traffic, but there's some other thoughts that we had behind that decision as well. So that is a change you'll notice. And then also in the bicycle facilities chapter, we talk about this idea of when to have a bicycle lane. So this chart you see here, this is actually taken from the bikeway selection guide that FHWA put out. And you can see sort of these fuzzy little lines of under what conditions they encourage different types of bicycle facilities. And they purposefully made those lines to be fuzzy and to not go out directly to one of these areas, so there's some decision making that comes into play. And also what's not shown on this chart is this is meant to be specifically for more urban areas, and they also had some notes that went along with it, so I encourage you to look at the guide and better understand the context of this. But how we interpreted it for the FDM is that we say that bike lanes are allowed up to 45 miles per hour, but we prefer other facilities when over 30 miles per hour. So this is the exact text that we use. In the bicycle lane section, we state, however, it is best practice to consider other types of facilities for design speeds greater than 30 miles per hour. In the bicycle lane width section, we have a clarification, and basically we're stating that it's not best practice to have all minimum widths next to one another. This is something that we've sort of been informally teaching, and it's been a best practice, but we've never specifically spelled it out in the FDM, and so we went ahead and did that. There are a lot of changes to the green colored pavement markings section of this chapter. Part of that comes from the fact that we're starting to see more and more green colored pavement throughout the state, and as that ramps up, we want to make sure that we have a sophisticated process in place for keeping track of where they are being implemented. And so some of the reasons why we're interested in keeping track of them is because we're allowed to put green colored pavement markings out there as part of our interim approval with the FHWA. So as part of that agreement, we need to keep track of where they are in case they rescind the agreement, and then we would need to remove them. But additionally, we have other groups within FDOT that are interested in knowing where these are placed throughout the state. And so for all those reasons, we want to have a more sophisticated process in place for keeping track of their implementation. So you're going to see more text as we go through this section on that, but this section has had some considerable changes. So first of all, we talk about bicycle vehicle conflict areas are illustrated in Exhibit 223-3 and include intersection bicycle boxes and two-stage bicycle turn boxes. So beforehand, we hadn't spelled those out, but those two always have green colored pavement markings, so we went ahead and included them. So this is part of our effort to make it a little bit more sophisticated how we keep track of our green colored pavement throughout the state. We added text saying the use of green colored pavement markings requires the approval of the district design engineer through the project suite's design approval request process. Next, include quantities in accordance with the basis of estimates manual. Load these quantities into the designer interface in the signing and pavement marking category. Projects using green colored pavement markings must submit either a GIS or CAD file depicting their location. The District Final Plans Unit will access the files in the GIS folder of the Final Projects folder and send them to this email address and copy the State Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator. Additional details on the file format can be found in the CAD manual and at the following website. So the next section that we have some changes in are the intersection bicycle box and the two-stage bicycle turn box. This is new text that we have clarifying in what instances either one might be your best option. Intersection bicycle boxes increase the visibility of stopped bicycle traffic at an intersection and help group together bicyclists to clear intersections more quickly. Two-stage bicycle turn boxes provide another option for bicyclists to make a left turn at an intersection. So this is a request that came from the districts to clarify that we don't need to have detection of bicycles if the signals are pre-timed. So we just spelled that out by adding some text there. This is the same thing, just in a different area of the section. The next change is in the marked shoulders section. In the past, we said that paved shoulders should be marked when we are in a C3R situation, and now we're saying either C3R or C3C, so we just generalize it to say C3. So the paved shoulder should be marked only when all the following are met. There's a design speed less than or equal to 45 miles per hour. The shoulder width is greater than or equal to 5 feet, and it's within the context classifications of C4, C5, C6, or within C3 when demand is demonstrated, and a shared use path is not present along the corridor. This goes along with removing the wide curb lanes in that bulleted list of our bicycle facilities. We likewise removed the section on wide curb lanes. All right, so there are some changes to the shared use path section of the chapter. All this red text here is new, and I'll just go ahead and read through it. A shared use path may be substituted for a bicycle lane when the roadway design speed is greater than 35 miles per hour and all of the following conditions are met. The context classification is C1, C2, or C3. Separation can be maintained between bicycle and motorized traffic through intersections, and conflict points are minimal and mitigated. As shown in figure 223.2.1, in some cases, it may be possible to fit a shared use path into the same space required for a sidewalk and buffered bike lane. In other cases, additional width may be required. See FDM 224 for shared use path design criteria. It is preferable to plan for shared use paths and separate bicycle lanes ahead of time by reflecting them in a district bicycle facility plan. So this is a pretty big change for us, all of this information here. This is the figure that was referenced in the previous text. This is a new figure, and this is just giving an idea of how this could look in your project. We removed some text in the shared lane marking section. Sharrows are used where it is not practical to provide a bicycle facility and any of the following conditions exist. We removed from that list the travel lane is too narrow for bicyclists and motor vehicles to travel safely side by side. We included quite a bit more guidance on separated bike lanes in this chapter. A separated bike lane may be used when all of the following conditions are met. A minimum required combined width of the separator and separated bike lane can be obtained. Separation can be maintained between bicycle and motorized traffic through intersections. And conflict points are minimal and mitigated. Cyclists should be given priority at the driveway and side street crossings. So basically what we're saying here is that we don't want a separated bicycle lane to just be kind of put into an area unless it's done well. So we want to make sure that the separated bicycle lanes aren't just kind of squeezed in, but instead that they truly have enough space and that we've been mindful of how much separation is being provided and how the conflict points are being managed. Use the criteria contained in FDM 223.2.4 in conjunction with the FHWA Separated Bike Lane Planning and Design Guide to plan and design separated bicycle lanes on the state highway system. So in addition to that new text in the kind of overview section of separated bike lanes, we've also created a number of new sections. One of them is type of separation. With roadways that have a 35 miles per hour or less, you may use an express lane marker, a raised median such as traffic separators, on-street parking with a raised median, and rigid barriers. If the roadway has a speed limit of 40 or 45 miles per hour, then the types of separation that are allowed are raised medians such as traffic separators or rigid barriers. And other forms of separation require approval from the state roadway design engineer. So if there's other separations out there, which there certainly are, if there are other ones that interest you for your particular project, it could still be considered, and go ahead and just bring it up to us to take a look at. We have another new section on the width of separation. The widths of separation are as follows. A 3-foot minimum if adjacent to on-street parking, and that's to allow for the door zone. See figure 223.2.2 for more information. And if adjacent to travel lanes, When it's 35 miles per hour or less, 6 feet is preferred, a 3-foot minimum unless using express lane markers or raised medians, then a 2-foot minimum. And then when it's 40 to 45 miles per hour, 8 feet is preferred, and there's a 3-foot minimum. We also provided a new figure, and that is figure 223.2.2, on-street parking, minimal separation. So again, we're just underscoring here that if you're using parking as part of your approach to separate the bicycle lane from the travel lane, a 3-foot minimum separation is required for that door zone. And the door zone is the space that is needed for a car door to open so that the person biking doesn't run into it. We also have a new section on separated bicycle lane widths. Use wider lanes where higher volumes are expected. The lane widths for separated bicycle facilities are as follows. Two-way facilities, 12 feet preferred, 10-foot minimum, and one-way facilities, 7 feet preferred, 6 feet minimum. We also have a new section on pavement markings for separated bike lanes. Pavement markings used for separated bicycle facilities must conform to the MUTCD, TEM, or FDM 230. Markings that do not conform to any of these manuals require approval by the state roadway design engineer and state traffic operations engineer. All right, so next I have a number of images. These aren't in the FDM, but hopefully they'll help illustrate a little bit more where we're coming from and what you might be seeing on some projects in the future on Florida state system. So this image here actually comes from the Massachusetts DOT, their new guide that they put out. And what this is showing is sort of that door zone area. Again, this is a raised median in conjunction with on-street parking. So this is a nice visual that kind of helps describe separated bike lanes. Express lane markers are one of the separation types that we describe in the FDM, and this is a visual of what that might look like. This is another example of what an express lane marker separation type for a separated bike lane might look like. This example is in Seattle, Washington. Raised medians are also talked about in the new FDM 2020 chapter. Here we have a raised median with on-street parking. Here's a raised median with on-street parking in our very own Tampa. Very proud to see this. This is the first separated bike lane in the state of Florida on the state system. So we talked about rigid barriers and more of our high-speed conditions, and this is an example of that in San Jose, California. And here's another rigid barrier example. We also have a new section in the separated bike lanes part about intersections and driveways. Chapter 5 of the FHWA Separated Bike Lane Planning and Design Guide includes typical designs to address the following: facility connections at intersections, side streets and driveways, and traffic operation tools such as bicycle signal faces and signal phasing. See the TEM for more information on traffic operation tools. Maintain separation between bicycle and motorized traffic through intersections. So we do not want mixing zones or keyhole lanes once we come up to an intersection. It's really important that that separation be maintained. That can oftentimes be the most stressful part for the cyclist, is at those conflict areas there, so we want to make sure separation is maintained. Minimize turning conflicts through access management. Cyclists should have priority at the driveway and side street crossings that remain. So I talked in the previous slide about maintaining separation through intersections. One way to potentially do that is through a protected intersection. This is not in the FDM, but this is an example of how that might be achieved. So it's showing that the cyclists, when they come up to an intersection, there's these little corner refuge islands that will keep them separated from the car traffic, which would be over here. And then they would have their own space separated from the pedestrians to traverse an intersection. All right, those are all the changes to the FDM 223 bicycle facilities chapter. we're really excited to have put that together for everyone, and we hope that it will work well. Thank you.